All right, welcome back to a bonus episode of the Blasters and Blades podcast. So, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies, a place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. So, without further ado, let me tell you what we're doing right now. We're getting ready to release some of the archive that we found from when we were the sci-fi shenanigans. We're going to get those up there for the posts that were brought down. We thought you might enjoy them, and so without further ado, let us roll that beautiful. Oh wait, they're going to sue me. Play it.
Hey, all you crazy sci-fi fans. Time for your daily dose of insanity over here at the Sci-Fi Shenanigans podcast with your hosts, J.R. Handley and me, Chris Winder. Just two nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions. A place where the sky's the limit, space is the place, and nerds run the world. Without further ado.
All right, and welcome to another episode. Today, as our special guest, we have William S. Frisbee Jr., although we just call him Bill. Yay! He's the son of a soldier, so at least his dad got it right, who got even and joined the Marine Corps. He's had a lot of jobs: administrative assistant in an office, U.S. Marine Infantry squad leader. Hoorah! That's for you. Security lieutenant, help desk technician, and computer consultant. He's traveled quite a bit, living in Europe, Germany specifically, for about 8 years in various states from Hawaii to California and Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Florida, and even Kentucky. And I will remember to speak, I promise. He's lived in Okinawa and traveled to Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. So yes, he has lots of frequent flyer miles. These days, he's mostly a computer consultant, husband, and dad. And yes, if you thought that sound canned, because we did another lazy show prep day and stole it from his official bio. Yay! Did we get everything right? Did I mess up?
No, you did good.
Outstanding. I was waiting for someone to say one day, wait, I'm not Bob. Who's that?
We'll just start over.
Did you get the right notes? It's going to happen. Knock on wood.
Oh, yeah.
Oop, I like the way you think, Chris. See? All right. So the next part of the introduction that we always do is we talk about how we met our guest. For today, for Bill, I actually met him through a Google search, if you would. So I Googled military science fiction and found his MilSF website, and which will be in the show notes, and we'll go over that again at the end with all the links as usual, and started stalking him online, as you do, when you find interesting people, you just stalk them. So don't tell him it's me peeping in the windows, though.
Well, like everybody
what
else,
about you, Chris? Where did you first find good
famous,
old Bill?
Infamous, geeky, and good to know? I met him through JR, and I'm so convinced that JR literally knows everyone. So JR kept hinting and teasing and making me wonder what I should be writing about and how I should be writing military science fiction, and kept referencing that there was something coming in the future. He couldn't tell me what, but there was something important that I should read coming in the future. And then once I finally got the book, I wasn't sure I wanted to do the interview because I didn't want to share this resource. I wanted to keep it all to myself. I'm greedy. It's a fact. It's like giving the enemy a big stack of ammo, saying, "No, don't use it against me." Let's be fair. I gave it to you. Don't forget.
Well, I mean, I told you as much as Bill would let me.
That's okay. I understand top secret projects.
I didn't want to get blown up either.
In all fairness, it's fair to share it with everybody else. Plus, I'm sure he'd like to sell a few more books. Yeah.
Sometimes that does help keep the lights
Bill,
on.
what do you love about science fiction? What has drawn you to this genre?
Oh, everything. What I like about science fiction is that it's not the here and now. The here and now is depressing. Science fiction, it's different in that it's not what is, but what can be. And I think ever since I've been knee high to a grasshopper, I've been the here and now is boring. I like to look forward and see other places and stuff like that. So that's what's always drawn me about science fiction. I mean, when Battlestar Galactica first came out, like 100 years ago, I love that show. Same with Doctor Who. I couldn't get enough of it.
Okay, do you remember the name of the little robot that wore the robot called Doc around his neck? The one that looked like he had a bowl cut.
The robot, the dog robot. You had Boxy. That was the kid.
Yeah. The one that looked like the kid was Boxy.
Or are you talking? No, the kid was Boxy. I thought. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe that was a dog. Gosh, it's been so long.
Nobody remembers.
I've got a picture in my head. If you're talking about the kid, he actually showed up in the new one, but he had like no role. But they never brought back the dog, the robot dog.
Yeah, I missed the dog.
Yeah.
Ah, well.
Well, I have learned something today, though, as I update the notes, so I remember what he says. That way we can reference back for some on-the-spot questions. And I type in Battlestar Galactica, and it does not like the word Galactica, proving word programmers are not nerds.
I have to fix it in all my autocorrect.
Because otherwise they would fix this.
Yeah, learn word.
It is just not right.
Yes.
If you're listening, Microsoft, fix this. I'm just saying. All right. Carry on.
So was it Battlestar Galactica or another show or something else? Like with me, I don't remember the name of the show, but there was this cartoon that had a giant battleship that could turn into a robot called the STF-1. And I have no idea what show that was, but I remember seeing that when I was about 5 years old. What's your earliest memory of sci-fi?
My earliest, it'd probably be Battlestar Galactica, if not the Yamamoto of Star Blazers.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
One of those two. Oh, you haven't seen Star Blazers?
I have.
You still sing that song?
Some good stuff in there.
Yeah.
When was that back in?
Are you going to sing the song for us?
You want listeners to stay on, right?
You. All right. So don't sing.
What's your earliest memory of playing games in the genre? Are you a console gamer, a PC gamer, or board gamer?
I started out with Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, yeah.
That was like in elementary school, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then that took me on, and then I remember getting into Gamma World, but I could never get anybody to play Gamma World, and then Space Opera. And then there were Star Frontiers. As far as computer games, good gosh, I think that one of the first computer games I started playing that was sci-fi was Wing Commander.
Wing Commander.
I remember that.
Dungeons & Dragons and Wing Commander. That's pretty much universal for everybody.
Yeah.
For all the cool kids, anyway.
Yeah.
It's a good background.
We weren't cool back then, though. You played Dungeons & Dragons. You were definitely a pariah.
Yeah. Satan worshiper of the worst kind.
I actually didn't play as a kid.
Sister.
So.
You played after you became an adult?
Yeah, I had 2 sessions as an adult, and that's it. And then everyone kept moving. I'd like to get back into it, but it's like all that copious free time I don't have. Makes it difficult.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to get back into it too, and there's no time. And getting the group together, and nobody else has time.
Yep. So
everybody has kids and careers now.
Oh yeah,
the man keeping us down.
Yeah.
All right. So, how did your love of the genre specifically translate into writing instructional novels for authors?
Well, see, the first time I joined the Marine Corps, and then I went to see a movie, and it was like, my gosh, what are they thinking? When I was watching that movie. So then I wanted to educate people. So back in the 90s, I created a website, and I started writing down a lot of my thoughts about, where warfare is going, the way small unit tactics work and stuff like that. And this was probably 97, 98. I think it's the first time I created the website. And I just wanted to educate people. I wanted to see a better quality of movie, better quality of book. And that's just kind of how I made that transition. And it's been an experience.
So little by little, what'd you use? Like Angel Fire? Remember Angel Fire?
I used Notepad to make a website.
Oh, yeah.
I did it old
the
school.
hard way.
Yeah, I did it old school.
Yeah, Notepad is the only right way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
You nerds. Oh, jeez. I can turn it on.
Well, I couldn't
hit the
afford
on-
anything else.
I can turn the on-off button on my Xbox.
Hey.
I'm probably the biggest Luddite nerd you'll meet because I'm horrible at technology. I'm where good technology goes to die and crash.
Yeah, I remember building websites using angelfire.com as the host because it was free. And I think Yahoo had a free.
GeoCities?
Oh, GeoCities. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, GeoCities was awesome.
Yeah, I think I played with GeoCities a little
for
bit.
dummies.
Mm-hmm. And I put together, I had a service provider that gave us a free website. And it's still out there, actually. warcat.qx.net, I think.
Okay.
And I haven't been with them in like over a decade.
So do you remember
stuff up?
Do you remember the iconic loading sequence when you were first going on, when it was AOL, that noise and then the dots and the beeps and the screeches?
I never did
You've
AOL.
got mail.
I did CompuServe, but I didn't do AOL.
Yeah,
I remember
CompuServe.
Yeah.
I remember when we actually got the second line, so that way you could get on the internet without closing the phone down.
Or getting kicked off when someone called in.
Right.
I didn't want to talk to anyone even back then. One line, if I'm online, you're not talking to me.
The dark days of the internet.
When I was younger, my family had, a say in whether the phone was usable.
Well,
and I had two sisters that were always on the phone with whoever.
Ooh. Yeah.
So going back to your writing, it kind of sounds like you're a lot like me. When you see someone doing something wrong, you kind of want to fix it. Would you say that inspired your tactical writing?
Yeah.
Kind of what you were talking about before?
Yeah. I just, and I want to read better quality stuff. When I read someone else and they're kind of like missing some things, it's like I got to step back from it. But a lot of what inspired it is I wanted to help other people because not everybody joined the Marine Corps infantry. And
right.
The smart ones joined the Army infantry. What?
We could argue that one. When I grew up in Germany.
I joined as a 2512.
I actually saw the Army training, and I went to Army JRTC. So, and I spent 7 years in Germany working closely with the Army and as a high schooler. So I got to see a lot of the Army. My mother was actually in the Army. So my mother wore combat boots.
And then while I was movie too, by the
way. So I saw a lot of the Army. And then, of course, with my uncles and my cousins, they were all Army. So I had to go Marine Corps. The motto at the time was...
Had to show them up.
Yeah. Be all you can be. It's like, okay.
That was what it was when I enlisted. In fact, my dad did 23 years in the Navy as an engineman. And so the running joke as a kid was, I'd rather my daughter work in a house of ill repute than my son join the Marine Corps. So I actually first talked to the Marine recruiter just to get even. But they weren't doing the split, what do you call it? The split training at the time. And where you could go, like I went to boot camp as a junior in high school between my junior and senior year. And then I went back after I graduated for AIT. That just wasn't an option. Of course, literally days after I signed the contract with the Army and had been to the MEPS, they called, "Oh, we've got a slot. If you just sign up." I was like, "Oh, too late." So, and then I made it even better. Are you familiar with the Navy at all? Did you deal with the ships, or were you mostly?
I've got several months ship time.
So in the Navy, I guess the bosun's mates and the enginemen have like a little bit of a rivalry. And so when I enlisted in the Army, it was as an Army bosun's mate to my dad's engineman. Of course, they phased the unit I was supposed to join out, and I ended up in the infantry. But it wasn't what I intended. I was just trying to stick it to my dad.
Yeah, my mother threatened to disown me if I joined the Army.
Did she really?
Oh, yeah. which wouldn't have stopped me, but the Marine recruiter called me.
Okay.
And I was going to go enlist in the Army, and but the Marine recruiter called me, and it's like, I hadn't thought about that.
Right.
And then the rest was history.
So,
Then you thought about it a lot during boot camp.
I kept thinking in boot camp that the Air Force would have been so much sweeter.
Yeah. Oh, now they've
Would've
got
been
co-ed barracks and.
See, I did my when I enlisted in the reserves, and then I ended up getting federalized because of the war on terror. But when I enlisted, they were letting people that did close combat support for infantry units, which I was in a riverine squadron, or I was supposed to, small boats, and so they sent me to infantry OSUT at Fort Benning, and so I did all of the same stuff they did. And it was just, so when I got to the unit that I was supposed to join, and they said, hey, there's no unit here. It shut down, a decade before you were born. But, oh, by the way, you've got this nice, shiny infantry training. So it just it was fate, I guess.
Well, yeah. But, see, I went in guaranteed infantry. I wanted infantry. There was no two ways about it for me.
Well, I was just doing it for college. I was going to get a commission, and then, the war happened, and then 2 deployments and an injury. It just, I had planned on going infantry as an officer, but as far as the enlisted stuff, I just, whatever was fun. Was because it's the reserves. I remember my recruiter telling me that the reserves would only get called up after the women's auxiliary and the Boy Scouts. Because it just wouldn't happen. And in fact, in 98, CNN did a special about world peace might finally be attainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so that the joke, they got that wrong. So the joke was on me. But so back to your books, because we could nerd out over this military stuff forever. You've written a lot of military themed manuals for the airsoft crowd. So here's a sampling for the listeners. He's written the Airsoft Bible Book of Comm, the Airsoft Bible Book of Tactics. You've written the Conglomerate trilogy, which is science fiction, and your current book, which was just out, Writing Military Science Fiction for Infantry. And I understand there's going to be some follow-ons for space combat and fleets and the like. Yep. So we're going to focus on your writing manuals just because it's a chance to nerd out about military science fiction, and who doesn't love that?
Yeah.
And so obviously those all sound fascinating, but in full disclosure, just because I want to be honest, I did beta read the military science fiction infantry novel, so I am a little biased because I did enjoy it. So we'll just put that out there.
I'm a little biased too, for full disclosure, because I've only had the time to get through the preface where he explains what the book's going to be about, and already I've doubled what I know.
Well, I used it.
So I'm loving it.
I didn't have time to do the page-by-page read because it's a thick manual. I mean, what did you say? It was something like 200,000 words, Bill?
140,000. That's what.
So it's impressive.
Wow.
And it's a lot of factual data, which means you're going to read it a little slower if you're reading it. And so what I did is I was just getting to the point where I was writing my super secret project that I've alluded to, that we'll be announcing sometime later this month. And so normally what I would do is I have a stack of reference manuals, the infantry squad manual, the company tactics manual, and all the basic soldier skills, all the manuals that all the military people have access to. I kept mine. So I would reference them. And so you're cross-referencing a lot of books. What Bill did was he put all that information in one place. So I tested it while I wrote that book and used it for reference to check, like how far would an infantry squad be able to march in an hour, carrying full rucksack and all that kind of stuff. It's in there. So it's definitely very user friendly.
And that was the whole goal.
Yeah. Cool info.
Thank you. Originally I wrote a book for airsoft because I used to play airsoft a lot and a lot of clueless individuals. So then I got into that, and then I saw the website was kind of there. And so I just kind of picked up on that. And I do have a whole bookshelf full of military manuals that I referenced a lot of to put that together. So
cool. Yeah, I've got a bunch of them too. I kept all of mine. In fact, this is going to sound funny. So when I enlisted in the Army in 99, they had in the basic soldier skills manual where it says a good soldier will sleep when and where they can because you never know when you'll be able to sleep again. Meaning, you don't spend all your time messing around. I'm trying to keep this PG and not cuss, and this is very hard when we're talking military stuff. But so obviously you don't want to stay up all night, binge watching Game of Thrones if you've got to be up at 4 a.m, because who knows what the day will bring, kind of thing. And so they had to remove that from the basic soldier manual. I still have the original because soldiers, especially the privates, were using that when they'd sham out of work, they'd hide, and they'd have that page bookmarked, and it said, "Sir." So those manuals can be a lot of fun if you know how to read them. You can get yourself into or out of a lot of trouble with those things.
Yeah, there's a bunch of good ones, and since I got out, when I was in, I kept all my manuals. So I kept all my infantry patrolling and stuff like that. And then when I got out, I still collect those books. So if I find a good one on Amazon, I'll order it, and I've got like the Army Officers Course and all sorts of oddball books.
And the Ranger one where it talks about the creation of all that kind of stuff. It's definitely good fodder for thought.
I think I've got the Ranger one from the 80s. And then the newer one.
I got the one from early 2000s, I think, was when I bought mine. So whatever the edition was then.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and they change.
So why don't you give us an overview of what's in this book without, I guess, without
as much as I could fit. I started working on book one. Or I started working on a book and I said, okay, I'm going to have 3 sections in it. I'm going to have infantry, I'm going to have spaceships, I'm going to have ground vehicles and squadrons and fighters and stuff. And then I just got to a point, it's like, this isn't going to fit in one book. So I've had to break it apart. And then my goal was it was a bear just organizing everything in such a way that it made sense. There's just so much information. The psychology, what does it take to pull the trigger on somebody, some terminology in the military. What are small unit tactics like? And it's just such a wide range. And I pulled a lot of different sites and forums to see what kind of questions were asked. So I got those and I used that as a list. And it's just, and even now I'm still watching and I'm getting a list for the follow-on volume.
Okay.
Do you think there'll be a version 2 of this book later on?
There's, I can't cram enough in that one.
As things update, right?
There's got to be.
So have you read?
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Have you read the On Killing the Psychological Cost of Learning to Kill in War and Society?
Yep, from David Dressler.
I've read that one too.
Yeah.
So.
He's got another book out too on combat, and that focuses more on police, and that's got more details in it as far as the physiology and what happens and how, an officer or someone, they could be firing their weapon and they can hear the enemy firing, but they can't hear themselves firing. And it's just really fascinating, some of those aspects.
Right. Okay. That's why they never really ask a cop how many shots he fired.
Yeah. Because he might not even know he fired. My gun wasn't working.
You just go count the rounds.
And
now I have heard some of his questioning his assessment about whether they were actually shooting to kill in previous wars. I don't know on the research side. It's definitely an interesting question. It's something, if you're writing military science fiction, you need to consider, especially as we've progressed as a society. We are a lot less willing to accept combat losses, and life becomes more precious. So the act of taking life becomes something more difficult to manage, I think.
And I think that boils down to our actual lifestyle. Like back in World War II, a lot of people might have lived on a farm, or they were more basic in that, okay, I've got a chicken, I got to cut its head off and I'm going to prepare it. So people were more close to that. Yeah.
They were more exposed.
So they had that, they understood it better. But now people are like, they don't experience death. They don't understand. They might have lost a pet, but that was like years ago. It's not a daily thing for them.
Right.
And plus with the video games in our society, we're just, we're not dehumanizing, but we're kind of programming people. That killing is okay and that killing's acceptable. And it's
until it actually happens, and then
they realize
it bothers them a lot.
PTSD plays into that a lot as well.
I think a lot, at least with the PTSD, I wonder how much of that is because so much fewer. The number of people that serve are so much smaller that it used to be when you came home from World War II, like you would have your neighbor, the guy down the street, whatever. You could talk to someone if you needed to, so you didn't feel as alone. Whereas now, I mean, you might not ever see someone again unless you stay in a military town like I did, who was there when you were there and saw what you saw. So, and I also think that even then, if you take that and extrapolate it within the military, the tooth to tail ratio, while it's gotten small, that's the amount of troops it takes to support an infantry or a combat troop versus, how many in the rear supporting them. And while it takes less to support a ground combat force now than it used to, I think the lifestyles are so far removed. Like, talk to someone that just lived on the FOB. I mean, they had AC and Pizza Hut and Burger King and,
never left the
I sweated sand and ate MREs, and what I mean. Like it can be an entirely different combat experience if you want to even call that combat. And I'm not taking that away from them, but I mean, just the disparity even within the ranks is so huge now, and that's only going to grow, I think, as combat becomes more asymmetrical.
Yeah,
but
asymmetrical and with drones, it becomes less personal as well.
Yeah, there was a big kerfuffle, if you would, about giving combat status, pay, etc. to drone operators.
Yeah, I remember that
because they were sitting in the U.S.
and some kind of medal or something that they were getting.
Yeah, they were trying to give them the combat action badge in the Army, at least, I think, or an equivalent thereof. And it's like, I mean, what you did counts. So I'm not taking that away, but your boots weren't in the mud sweating and it's different. I don't know. Right. So. All right. Well, I'm going to steal the show from Chris because I do that sometimes. And so how did you come up? This was supposed to be his question, but I'm fascinated and I don't want to wait for him to get around to it. So how did you come up with the idea for the series when you talk about the specific tactical stuff in the manual? Like, not the broad idea was obviously you saw errors in the market and you wanted to fix it and fill the niche. But as far as like when you start talking at the granular, can't speak today, at the small level, like for the average, boot on the ground, when you talk about tactics from that level, and you do in your book, how do you envision that? Like, where do you start from today and extrapolate, or?
Yeah, I start from my experience and extrapolate from there. I never see anybody writing books about the little guy, the infantryman, how that combat works. They're always like, the battalion moved here and there. But I take it from my experience because in the Marine Corps, I was called Robo Grunt or Techno Grunt because I love technology. And I was always trying to find the newest, latest, greatest, little piece of web gear or what have you to test and all that. And I loved Soldier of Fortune. And I was always ordering stuff online, or not online, but through, mail. And I just love technology. And I kept figuring, how is this going to change combat? And back then, if I'd had a chance, I would have been one of those guys with like every attachment available on my M4. To test it out.
You've been the mall ninja.
It'd been twice the regular weight. The laser, the light, the scope, the extra sights, the
3 bayonets.
So that's where So that's where I take it from. I take it from the ground. What's going to be like for the infantryman in the mud, and then I work my way up from there.
Did you see? That's what I try to do when I write. I don't know how well I do it, but that was sort of the starting point for my series. Now, when you deployed, did they actually give you a bayonet? Was that even something? Like, we trained on them, but we were never issued one. I carried a K-bar instead and a pilot survival knife.
One of my nicknames was Nine Knives. I carried a lot of knives. I had a World War I bayonet, and then they did issue us regular bayonets.
We weren't
but
issued
I kept
them.
I kept mine in my butt pack because I was never going to use it. I had other better knives, and we were never going to fix bayonets. And if we were, I had one of the brand new Army M9 bayonets that I had acquired.
We actually had a situation where our LT ordered us to fix bayonets. Of course, nobody had them. So so we had we were escorting a unit out of Nevada. I ran the convoy escorts, and this was a convoy unit out of Nevada, and the LT in charge was a former light infantry Marine who went. Got out, went National Guard as a way to pay for college and all of that. And so we ended up getting boxed in a square in Karbala. And we're escorting ammo of all things. So we've got trucks filled with Connex boxes of ammo, and we got lost because the LT, not this LT, the other one that was in charge, had us turn right when we should have turned left on this road. And so we get boxed in. So, he just circle the wagons essentially and wait for them to figure it out. And of course, once you stop, you've got to protect your perimeter. And we started taking fire from one of the buildings. And so light infantry tactics is you fix bayonets and you charge the objective so you can get under their fire. But of course, he's telling us that when we've got civilians to protect. And oh, by the way, nobody's got that bayonet. I did find, and this got me in a little bit of trouble, but I did find when bayonets fail, explosive grenades win. And gotta love Mark 19.
Oh,
Yeah.
They are great. I love firing those.
Yeah, level a few buildings, but what are you going to do? But we're at the half-hour mark, so let's take a moment and have a word from our sponsor.
Hey listeners, Josh Hayes here, co-host of Keystroke Media. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Sci-Fi Shenanigans. I tell you, we're really excited about what JR and Chris are doing with the podcast and are proud to feature them as part of our podcast partner network. When you get done listening to this episode, I'd like to invite you to come check out our own podcast at keystrokemedium.com. You can find all our previous episodes and check out all the amazing authors we've had on the show. If you're free on Mondays, mark your calendars for 11 a.m. Come hang out with us as we talk to today's leading science fiction and fantasy authors and other industry professionals. We've got a great live audience who get into a lot of shenanigans of their own, as JR and Chris can attest. That's every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, live on Keystroke Media. We're going to talk about some reading, we're going to talk about some writing, and of course, everything in between. And now I'll let you get back to some more shenanigans with JR and Chris. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you to those wonderful sponsors. They're the best. Everyone says so. I say so. And that's all that really matters, right, people? Anyway, so let's back to get to talking to Bill. So we've talked about your infantry manual for writing military science fiction, and you've talked about other manuals that will follow, which I'm excited to beta read those as well. But let's stop shamelessly plugging you and talk about the genre writ large now. So we're going to specifically look at how they did things right, what they did wrong, etc. All things military, and we'll just try to narrow our focus away from our own deployments and back to what we love to read. So what are you reading in the genre, and what are you seeing as far as trends, the good, the bad, and the ugly for Mil SF?
I'm seeing a lot of infantry and small unit tactics coming out as well. Right now I'm reading like Terra Nova, almost finished with that one.
Ooh, that's good.
And I got to go back and read Ember Wars. I haven't read that yet, which is brutal. But
it was good. That was where I started.
Yeah, I realized I've got it. I just have like 1,200 books on my Kindle, and 400 of them are read. But I always like to read Marines and stuff like that. And I really think the genre, you've got two military science fiction areas that I've seen. You've got the infantry, the Marine, the low level, the grunt, and then you've got the fleet. So you've got those two different, nothing in between. Except
in the Amazons, which is what we try to use as our compass, at least for that, just because it's easy, they categorize military SF and they break it down to Space Fleet and Space Marine is the distinction.
Yeah. There's a few I've seen that fit in between, but not that many.
I just about to ask what kind of thing would be in between?
Be starfighters. It's not the big
like close air support.
Individual starfighters. I know of two authors that do that, and they seem to do it pretty good. And they've got a really good knowledge on, squadron operations. Pretty good reads.
And which books are these, or authors?
So one is like the Spiral Arm.
Oh, by SF Edwards?
Yeah. That one, I think he does a really good job, with the fighter pilots and their world. And he doesn't concentrate on the big battleships going at it like some of the other authors. And then the other one is Don Kyers.
Funny fact. Real quick, funny fact about SF Edwards. Aside from he writes science fiction and his initials are SF, he actually designs airplanes by his day job.
It shows. He knows fighter ops.
Like he'll design them, and then he'll print 3D models of them to make sure it works, and it would be like aerodynamic and all that. And like, I did an interview of him on my blog before we started the podcast, and he was sending me all the schematics and stuff. Mm-hmm. It was impressive.
Yeah, he locks that down. I think he does a good job there. But he's one of the ones that would fit in between. The other one I've seen would be like Don Kyers, and I'm probably messing up that last name, but he writes the Enlightenment Protocols, and he's an old Army veteran, but he's got really good detail in that center. He likes to do a lot of infantry stuff, but then he also goes with flight operations and a little bit of fleet. So he would be fitting right in the middle there, and I thought he had some pretty good, starfighter operations.
All right, we'll have those books he referenced in the show notes. Now, if you were going to name, we have the Amazon calls it Space Fleet and Space Marine. If you were going to name that in between, what would you call it?
Squadron operations, I guess. I don't know. It's I'd probably say like squadron operations or vehicles.
I think that would work. Yeah. So what's the best example of troops that you've seen in sci-fi? It could be movies, it could be books, it can be anything.
Yeah, I don't want to go to your movies because I don't like the Starship Troopers. That totally misses the book. But
yeah,
but that was a good movie.
Yeah. Well, I actually haven't seen the movie.
The two.
I've read the book. I couldn't bring myself to watch the movie.
I've read the book and watched the movie. If you can accept that there's two separate entertainment venues that just happen to have the same name, it's a good movie for what it is.
Yeah. I'll take your word for it. I hear the graphics are great.
Yeah, they're not bad.
So
it's a little on the B movie side, a little corny, but yeah.
Yeah, but I love some cheesy B movies. I love cheesy B movies. So. Like werewolf Nazis take on the Allied forces or something crazy.
Yeah, Sharknado.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, so they were smoking a little something when they were writing that script. I don't care. I'll still watch.
Well, I saw an interesting thing how it was parody, but
go ahead.
So what are the best troops?
No, he was going to tell us something.
Yeah. There's Outriders. Have you guys read Outriders?
I have not. Tell us about it.
That is actually pretty cool. It's about a special forces soldier, and basically the premise is they kill him, and they kill him so they can capture his persona or something like that. So if he goes out on a mission, gets killed, they can clone him and bring him back. And it talks about a war with Mars, and it's actually pretty cool and pretty gritty.
Have you read B.V. Larson's Undying Mercenary series? Has something similar?
Yeah.
I enjoyed that as well. That had a lot of that, where you back your brain up essentially, and then they spit out a new copy.
Yeah, and that was more, that makes me think video games. You get killed, you reset, and you're back at it.
Except for they covered the emotion, at least B.V. Larson did. He covered like how that affects you emotionally. Mm-hmm. Are you still you if the original you died, and then he covered there's the concept of the permanent death, meaning if you weren't backed up, or if they can't, there's like galactic rules. So like, if they can't confirm that you died, if they haven't like eyeballed your body, then they can't reprint you because they can't have two of you floating around.
Yep.
So, you had to die where somebody lived to say, yes, they all died.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was still the risk. It was just less.
Yeah. I got to like book 3 of that series. I think it's book 3, but it's been a while since I've read it. That was a pretty good series.
He's on like 6 or 7 now. I've enjoyed all of them.
Okay.
I highly recommend it.
After the good stuff, what's the without naming any specific names, because we try not to bash other authors here, but what are some bad things you're seeing happening with troops in science fiction?
Most of them aren't military writers. They don't focus on it so much, but I'm not going to mention names, and nobody here, but I see a lot of bad authors. They think infantry are dumb grunt. They're only good at carrying a rifle. And, I hate to see, the special forces come at us and they're just shooting at us. No, they're going to flank you and do all sorts of other nasty things. So it's like, when I see stuff like that, it's like, okay, they've got no clue. And it bothers me. So
it's lazy writing.
Yeah, lazy writing. They don't understand. They think that two groups, when they get together, they just throw bullets at each other until one of them gets lucky. And that's not how it works.
They just stand there.
Yeah.
I think what gets me the most is the idea that the weapon is just a tool that's interchangeable. Like, they don't realize that for a lot of us, it has personality. It becomes a part of you, and it's more than just a tool. Like, all the rifles might look the same, but I could tell you which one was mine.
And they're used differently.
It was different. It fired a little different. Right. And, I modified it just a little bit, tweak the aiming or whatever. Like, they're even if it's just two M16A2s side by side, they're still not the same.
Yeah.
Because one is mine and the other is not.
Yep.
And I think a lot of authors miss that. Yeah. And I'm always reminded of that iconic scene from Full Metal Jacket where they sort of incorporate that idea of this one is yours.
Yeah. This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. Without my rifle, I'm
and that is very true.
There's a prayer for that. We learned in boot camp. I still remember part of it.
I remember.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't remember all of it. One too many head injuries. It makes some short-term memory a little bit difficult.
Yeah. But
so
another thing that kind of annoys me is when I see authors, everybody has the same weapon. There's no variation. You don't have a saw gunner. You don't have a grenadier, or they all have assault rifles with grenade launchers. It's like, well, no saw gunners, no tank gunners, nobody with anti-bunker missiles or anything like that. It's just, and there's no specialization throughout the organization. It's just everybody's a gun carrier. They carry a rifle.
Right. They're all Xerox copies of each other.
Yeah, I can see that. That was one of the things Tim Taylor brought me in to address, and why my story evolved the way it did. I had to go back in time to get someone that had those skills, because, it fit within the scope of his universe. They didn't have that because the alien overlords didn't want them to. But, that is definitely a thing you see writ large. Yeah. I think the difference is when he wrote book 1, he didn't know as much as he did when he wrote book 2. So he had to sort of justify it in canon. But hey, that happens. Everyone makes mistakes we have to fix. The best ones are ones that can fix it in book 2 and make it part of the story versus having to release volume 2. So I like the way he did it, but yeah, I've seen that in other books as well, where the weapons are interchangeable. He said, no, you can in a pinch. I could pick your rifle up and fire it and probably hit pretty damn close to what I'm aiming at, but dang close. So what's the best?
In technology too, you got to keep in mind that you pick up a weapon, it's probably going to integrate with your scope or your, heads up display. So yeah, technically you can pick it up and start moving it around. And different weapons have different ballistic characteristics. So you pick it up, it identifies itself as, a Mark II rifle. Here's the ballistic qualities. Here's the battle sight 0, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, but it's just one of the things I learned. I was getting out right as all the scope stuff was going, mainstream in the Army. So I actually got in trouble for cheating on a weapons qual because I didn't use the scope. I used iron sight for both rounds. You were supposed to qualify once with iron sights and once without, or once with the scope. I just did iron sights both times because that's what I knew. But in the middle of a firefight, when the sandstorms are kicking and the weather isn't cooperating and getting banged and beat around, technology fails. Yeah. So you have to have that fallback. And I think that's one thing people forget. And that's another, I guess, pet peeve is the technology becomes perfect in, it becomes like a god almost. And that's not anybody. Well, you both have worked tech jobs.
Yep.
Stuff fails all the time.
When you need it most.
It does. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a job.
And when you need it most is when it's going to fail.
Right. There's that Murphy's Law, I believe. So, and that's one of the things, that's another pet peeve of mine, that they don't ever factor that in. Like everything's just too perfect. Yeah. So what's the best example you have of believable tropes in science fiction?
I think one I really liked was a book called Lance Jack. And I think it was Philip Richards wrote that. And he was a British Army or British Marine Corps, and he writes about British Marines. And he's got several books out, and it's just like hard and gritty, just the way the guy comes to a new unit and gets beat up, and it's just very, very hard.
The first book in that series is called Crow, and it's C period R period O period W period. It's an acronym for Combat Replacement of War, which is it's a British acronym for reinforcements, I think. But we are actually trying to get him on. We're waiting. Everyone who's reading his series and loving it is waiting for him to come back from deployment so he can write another one. But he's really good friends with Tim Taylor, so he's trying to hook us up with an interview with him.
Yeah, he's got really good stuff. So, Michael Williamson, I really liked his Freehold series. And one of the things I like about these authors is when a new person comes in, they don't know the first thing about a firefight. I mean, they've been trained, but then they just kind of like freak out when the rounds first start flying. And training kicks in, and that to me is, that's just the way it works. People have to realize that, hey, shooting
it's natural. Someone's actually trying to make me
this
dead.
is actually it. It's happening now. And, I just like to see that mental shift. And I think that really captures it. And plus, some of these authors, they've been in the military, so they know, and they've got that experience that they can integrate into it. They know that they're bullies when you first get to a unit. You're going to have some very obnoxious, tough guy who's going to give you a hard time. And I think everybody in the military has seen that and experienced that. So then when you read it in a book, it's like, okay, yeah, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that's the other thing that's fun to do is that I think because the American is, a lot of people read the American media, they watch the American movies, they see that culture, that I think there's a tendency to use that as the baseline for the military. So I actually liked that with Crow and some of the others where they use like other nations which have slightly different military cultures and military terms and unit structure. I like seeing somebody mix that up.
And
so that's one of the things I did like about Crow by Phil. I'm drawing a blank on his last name. Richards. There we go.
So talking about military culture, when you got out, usually we ask authors while they're in or about their military experience, how it affected your writing. I think that's pretty obvious. But when you got out, how has transitioning to civilian life affected your
quite
writing?
a bit. Because when I got out, I started playing paintball and I started playing airsoft. And then I started seeing other people and how they reacted under fire and under pressure and things like that. And that was also a real eye opener. I was in my unit in the Marine Corps for 4 years. After I did my boot camp and I went to the unit, I was with that specific unit, that platoon, for my entire time. So I didn't see other units and other groups training all that much. I think one time we had the French Foreign Legion come on base, but I didn't get selected to train with them. But then once I got out and then paintball and airsoft, I started interacting with other people, special forces, a few Navy SEALs, Marine recon and stuff like that. And I got to see how they acted and behaved in these situations. I mean, it really helped me kind of focus in on what my Marine Corps training had missed. how
Wow, I can imagine that would be.
Yeah, it was a shocker. Some of the people that they've never fired a paintball gun before, and they get out there, and it's really easy to suppress them. You just hit their cover a few times, they put their head down, they keep it down. But you're not going to suppress a SEAL, or another Marine or something like that.
So when you were,
go ahead.
I was to say, so when, drawing a blank here. Oh, as if I was going to ask, speaking of paintball. So when I was kitting out, a lot of the mount training, the urban combat training, we were going to paintball attachments to our rifles for the kill houses for training on urban ops. Was that something the Marines did when you were in? Or
no, they hadn't started. We had the miles gear. Yeah,
it replaced.
But
the
I was a
gear.
weirdo in that. When I was in Hawaii on the weekend, I would go play paintball, and I saw it as I was very different from my fellow Marines, especially once I was able to drag them out to the paintball field. And then when we do live fires and stuff like that, it just sets the mindset, and it's great training because, when we do a live fire exercise, the drill is, okay, you hear that first round, everybody takes cover, and that first round would go off and people are like, oh, I should take cover now. But I was already behind cover and looking for a target by the time they caught up. And then I realized, playing with some of these paintball guys, is they could look across the field and they say, there should be a blade of grass sticking up over there. That means that somebody's laying on top of it. And they'd put a few rounds and get the guy, and these were the people I went up against on the paintball field. And it was really enlightening to see that and then get my buddies out there. And, it didn't always go well for us,
well, that's the home team advantage in anything you do.
But it also, being a big, tough Marine, it takes the ego down a few notches and makes you step back and start listening.
I could see that. I definitely see the benefit of the paintball was transitioning out. One, we've mentioned in our introduction that you can cheat on the miles gear, rub a little bit of shoe polish on it, and then it's only like you hear the dry CO2 pop of you firing blanks, essentially. And it's a light that you don't see. You never see anything moving. It's just, it's like playing a video game almost, more so. And then if you get shot, you have to wait through the annoying beep while whoever's hosting the judges are. I'm drawing a blank on what the term for that was, but while they read the cadre read the card on your sleeve or whatever, saying, okay, did you die? What? Whereas with paintball, there's no question where you got hit. And so, and then the other part of that is when you're doing the buddy assaults, which is, I'm up, they see me, I'm down, where you do short charges and you cover each other to leapfrog forward. There's something to be said for watching the dirt pume up behind you or beside you or whatever from that paintball missing. Or not, but I mean, that definitely changes how you view it. Now, I did all that training after Iraq, so I just keep thinking how much better that could have prepared us if we had done it before.
Yeah, there's something very eye-opening when you hear that slam against your cover of them shooting at you. And it's like, yeah.
Or right beside you as you're charging forward. Now, what's the difference between paintball and airsoft?
So airsoft is like paintball except for men. It shoots a 6mm BB. Here's the key difference. In airsoft, the guns might be a little expensive, but they look exactly like your real weapon. I've got like a airsoft Glock 19 and a real Glock 19. I put them down in front of you. You will not be able to tell the difference. You could pick them up. You could play with them, except for the orange barrel on the Glock. You won't be able to tell. And it works the same way. So you pull the trigger, the slide goes back, and then it goes forward. When it's out of ammo, the slide locks to the rear. And the rifles are the same way. Some of them. They don't always lock to the rear, but you have to change magazines. They've got selective fire. Anything you put on your real M4, you can put on an airsoft M4. And the range is longer.
Including a bayonet if you run out of BBs.
And I've got a plastic trainer bayonet, but we're not allowed to use those.
So, like with a paintball, if you get hit, you've got that little red, green, whatever color. I'm colorblind, but whatever splash of color on your uniform, it's pretty obvious you got hit. How does that work with the airsoft?
And that's one of the flaws of airsoft is you have to listen to it, Yeah, and sometimes you'll get
And
the
a
welt.
welt.
But I've had paintball draw blood on me. I don't think I've ever had airsoft draw blood.
Oh.
But I have had people get their teeth shut out. Because in airsoft, they only require goggles, not full face protection. So it looks a lot more realistic at an airsoft event because you see people, they're loading magazines. They've got M4 magazines. They've got AKs. You can identify the weapons. It's like he's got an M14. He's got an AK. He's got a M4. He's got an M249 SAW. This guy over here has a M240 Bravo. The real weapons translate directly into airsoft weapons. So you can get almost anything.
So when I did it, it was they were essentially blank almost. Like it was a replacement round, if I remember correctly, that they attached to the M16. So I didn't actually use the more what you're talking about, the comical looking weapons for the actual
you've got the
paintball
Sims
guns.
gear, and the Sim gear, as I understand, you can use the real weapon. Basically, it's a paintball gun, a paintball that goes with a regular shell, so it works just like a regular bullet.
Yeah. That's what we had.
Yeah.
So if you got too close to when you fired,
it hurts.
I mean, you're going to shoot somebody.
Well, I'll let you know that I work in a school environment. Once in a while, the police come and train, and they train with paintball rounds, 9mm, 226. Or I'm sorry, 223, and a lot of times they leave a mess behind. So once in a while, if you look around long enough, you can find some of these things. They're the exact shape and size of a real round. So they fire them out of the real firearms.
That's what we did. If I'm remembering my training correctly. So, all right. Well, it's about an hour in, so this is where we start wrapping it up. So we'll start with, are there any scientific breakthroughs that you're excited by that could affect
3D printers,
the world of science fiction writ large?
I'm fascinated with 3D printers.
Okay.
You can print food. We're not quite printing good food yet, but everything from printing food to drones. And when you think about it, if you print an army of drones are becoming a thing, and a 3D printer that'll print out a bunch of drones. They have those. They're working on that. So you can really throw a lot of drones at the enemy, and specialized drones.
Well, plus eventually the plans will get out and civilians will start making the printers that make the drones in their own garage.
So it's like, I'm really fascinated by 3D printers and the capabilities there.
Okay.
Probably not the most.
What about you?
Pardon?
What's that?
Oh, I thought he was done. I was going to ask Chris what he was following.
Yeah,
you're still talking about 3D printers.
There's just so much capability there, and it might not be the most glorious thing, but then the potential is just astronomical.
I can't wait until they come up with a polymer that's actually as strong as steel. They're getting close, but as soon as they can do that, you could order auto parts and go pick them up 30 minutes later, printed, ready to go for anything. Or print them yourself if you have a printer, right? They'll never be out of parts because you can print them right there.
Well, they could always run out of the ink if you would, but
never.
Correct. All right. What about you, Chris? Are there any tech that you're watching that you're excited by?
Yeah. So there's a company called Cardiogram who produces a phone app that analyzes the data collected by iWatches regarding heart rate. So here's their list of claims as to what this software can do. And it's just for the iWatch right now, but I'm sure that they might be able to tweak it later for other ones, Samsung Gear, stuff like that. But the first claim is that the heart is connected to every other part of the body via the nervous system. Well, that goes without saying, but that doesn't really mean anything. Claim number 2 is that in one part, what happens in one part of the body affects every other part of the body. Well, I could see possibly. And claim 3, because the heart is part of the body. Claim 4 is that they have developed their own AI built into their servers. So I guess what happens is the watch collects the info, sends it to the app in your phone. The app in your phone sends it to their servers. And this AI called DeepHeart is able to discover pre-diabetes symptoms based solely on the heart rate info from your iWatch. So this is like a remote tricorder. This server could be anywhere, even on the moon, and that they're able to give you an alert and then send you to your doctor to go get confirmation that you have pre-diabetes. It's just, it's fascinating what AIs are doing and how they're tweaking technology.
That's cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, everybody's thinking about it.
I mean, it definitely is. It's interesting. So I give you that. Good find.
All right, what about you, JR?
I've actually just been nerding out lately over the whole Tesla Roadster in space. So I've been staring at all these pictures of the Starman and reading the articles about how the woe is me, it's going to crash into the Earth in a million years, assuming the Earth is even still standing. It's just it's interesting, right? And so, and it also, I don't imagine that the Tesla Roadster is built for reentry. So I don't foresee it surviving the reentry process enough to be a concern. But especially after however long in space. And taking all
getting pummeled by micrometeorites.
Right. And of course, object in motion and all of that. That's not to assume a meteor might not hit it and knock it off course. Just nudge it, Like so much is unknown because it's essentially it's a free-flying orbital or body in the solar system now. So it's definitely interesting. So I've been nerding out over the pictures. And I've got a link we'll put in the show notes about the why everyone is saying it looks fake. Because basically, in a nutshell, there's nothing distorting the color perception because there's no atmosphere. So the colors look crisper on the Roadster.
Yep.
So there's been some of the flat earthers are speculating that that's actually another sound studio somewhere because it looks so crisp. Clearly, that's not space or something. I don't know. What else? It's interesting. But thank you for coming on, Bill. So where can listeners find you?
Well, I tend to spend a lot of time on Facebook, as you know, and I've got a author page on Facebook of William S. Frisbee, and I've got my own personal website where I put my blog and links to books on williamsfrisbee.com, and those are usually the places I hang out. But you can also find, I post a lot of my military stuff on milsf.com and on the Facebook page, Military SF 101.
And I've got the links for all of that in the show notes. So you can just click on those instead of trying to scribble out on your notepads, people. What about us? Chris, where can they find us?
Our website is www.sfshenanigans.com. Our Twitter is @SFS. That's Sierra Foxtrot Sierra _show. And our email is podcast@sfshenanigans.com.
Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Chris Winder, I'm J.R. Handley, and this was the Sci-Fi Shenanigans Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of space and all things that go boom. All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that archived episode that was in the digital memory hole that we found. We thought you'd enjoy it. So thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the archive for the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back at our regular scheduled time where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom.